Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2. Testing.
All right, we have 9 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. And at this time, we will call the meeting for the Texas State Board of Pharmacy to order. As is our tradition, I will read the mission statement. The Texas State Board of Pharmacy, as a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall uphold quality standards for licensing and facilitate regulation that promotes innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education which produce quality care and positive patient outcomes. As far as the meeting procedures go, just remember, board members, to mute and unmute your mics. There are QR codes to the agenda posted in the room. The Wi-Fi password is available on the screen on the wall. And with that, I will turn it over to Danny for roll call.
Thank you, Julie. Donna Montemayor. Donnie Lewis. Here. Rick Fernandez. Haysha Freeman. No Haysha. Stacy Hightower. Randy Martin. No Randy. Ian Shaw. Suzette Tijerina. Rick Tisch. Jenny Yoakum. That's all.
All right. As far as continuing education, there will be 3 hours of continuing education that will be counted as the Texas-specific pharmacy law or as general credit. As usual, though, you will need to be here for the attendance of the whole meeting, and a QR code will be posted at the end. And with that, I will ask if the board, or I'll remind the board that everybody had a chance to review the minutes of both the April 30th meeting of the executive committee and last time's board meeting, which was held on May the 5th. Are there any corrections? And if not, could we have a motion to approve? I think Rick Tisch beat you, so Rick has the motion to approve. Donnie second. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. And with that, we will go into rules for adoption. Mr. Griffith, you want to take us through these?
Yes, Madam President. Board members, in the rule PDFs you have provided, there are bookmarks with links to lines with edits. Also, for the rules for adoption today, you have received copies of the orders and preambles and the OneDrive link that was sent to you. And also you have them on your computers. The rules for adoption today were proposed at the May 5th, 2026 board meeting and published in the June 26, 2026 issue of the Texas Register. And the first one we're going to look at is item on your agenda is C.1.1, amendments to 283.7 concerning examination requirements. And the board had asked staff to bring forward this rule after it was a discussion item at the February meeting, and then it was proposed in May. And this would simply allow pharmacy students to take the MPJE after their third year of pharmacy school. So looking at that rule, 283.7 examination requirements, we jump to line 54, and it states that the new part is except as provided in paragraph 3 of this subsection. Well, we look at paragraph 3, and that's lines 70 through 82. And that provides that an applicant who has completed the 3 didactic years of pharmacy education, i.e. P1 through P3 years, may take the Texas Pharmacy Jurisprudence examination a maximum of 1 time prior to graduation from a college/school pharmacy. There was some outdated language that was removed. And also in lines 83 through 89, we've added a reference to the scaled score as opposed to the average grade. Those were all the changes, and there were no comments received regarding this rule.
All right, board members, comments, questions? Do we have a motion to adopt? Donna Monmer has a motion to adopt. Do we have a second? Oh, everybody seconded. I'll go through with Rick Fernandez as a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. John?
All right, board members, the next two we're going to look at together under C.1.2. These are amendments concerning disasters and notifications. And the purpose here was to prevent misinterpretation of what qualifies as a disaster and requires the pharmacy to notify the board of ceasing to operate. The first rule is C 1.2.1 amendments to 291.3, and that is required notifications. And if we look at that rule and we jump down all the way to lines 136 through 139, it provides that fire, flood, or natural disaster, if a pharmacy experiences a fire, flood, or natural disaster that may have affected the strength, purity, or labeling of drugs, medications, devices, or other materials used in the diagnosis or the treatment of injury, illness, and disease, the following requirements are applicable. And here we're talking about responsibilities of the pharmacist in charge. And if you look at lines 141 through 145, it provides that the pharmacist in charge shall be responsible for reporting the date of the fire, flood, or natural disaster to the board within 10 days from the date of the fire, flood, or natural disaster. And jump down to lines 168 through 171. The amendments provide that if the pharmacy closes due to a fire, flood, or natural disaster, and timely notifies the board under subparagraph A of this paragraph, the pharmacy may be closed for not longer than 90 days. And finally, on line 177, provides that any drug which has been exposed to excessive heat, smoke, and we're adding the word moisture, or other conditions which may have caused deterioration shall not be dispensed. Those were all the amendments on that rule, and there were no comments regarding that rule. Forgot one part. Lines 278 through 283, loss of data. As provided by sections 291 through 34E, 291.55A, 291.75C, 291.104A, and 291.151E of this title relating to records, and operational standards, and pharmacies located in a freestanding emergency medical care facility or Class F. When a Class A, Class B, Class C, Class E, or Class F pharmacy experiences a significant loss of information from its data processing system, the pharmacist in charge shall report the loss to the board in writing within 10 days of discovery of the loss. The next one we're going to look at in conjunction here is C 1.2.2, amendments to 291.11, and that is the operation of a pharmacy rule. And here we're going to look at lines 57 through 61, which provide that cease to engage in the business described in the application for a license means the holder of a pharmacy license, once it has been in operation, discontinues operating the pharmacy for a period of 30 days or longer. And here's the new part, except as provided in paragraph 3 of this subsection. Well, paragraph 3 of this subsection is on lines 62 through 66. And that part provides now that a pharmacy may discontinue operating for not longer than 90 days if the pharmacy experiences a fire, flood, or natural disaster that may have affected the strength, purity, or labeling of drugs, medications, devices, or other materials used in the diagnosis or the treatment of injury, illness, and disease, and timely notifies the board under section 291.3G of this title relating to required notifications, which we just discussed. And again, there were no comments regarding either of these two rules.
All right. Any questions, board members?
A quick question. If it's more than 90 days, can that be extended by asking for an extension, or just 90 and that's it?
Mhm.
Okay, just making sure.
All right. What's the pleasure of the board? Do we have a motion to adopt? Donnie has made a motion to adopt. Rick Tisch has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Megan, I believe you're taking us through the next.
Yes, thank you. So this is C.1.3, 291.13, telehealth services provided by a pharmacy. And if you would, please open 291.13, not the revised 291.13. We'll talk about that version later. And then also open the copy of Chapter 111 of the Texas Occupations Code that is in your main board meeting folder, labeled as C.1.3 supplemental item. And if you pull them up side by side, that should be easier for you to follow along. Okay. So 291.13 is a new rule. It was proposed at the February board meeting and then reproposed at the May board meeting with some changes. And this new rule was brought forward because last session, HB 1700 amended Chapter 111 of the Texas Occupations Code and required the board to do some rulemaking. So starting on line 50 of the rule is a reference to the definition of telehealth service contained in Chapter 111. If you look at Chapter 111, in Section 111.0013 is the definition of telehealth service, which says, telehealth service means a health service other than a telemedicine medical service or a teledentistry dental service delivered by a health professional licensed, certified, or otherwise entitled to practice in this state and acting within the scope of the health professional's license, certification, or entitlement to a patient at a different physical location than the health professional using telecommunications or information technology. Going back to the rule, on line 52, it states that the requirements of subsection C of the rule apply to a telehealth service regardless of whether the patient interaction occurs in a video or audio-only format. On line 54, it states that a pharmacist who provides a telehealth service shall ensure that the informed consent of the patient or of another individual authorized to make healthcare treatment decisions for the patient is obtained before the telehealth service is provided. The informed consent may be obtained either in writing or verbally. Now, if you look back over in Chapter 111 at Section 111.002A, this is almost verbatim from the statute, only with the references to physicians or dentists removed. Returning to the rule, on line 58, it states that the informed consent shall include the patient's consent to treatment, data collection, and data sharing, and that the informed consent shall be documented in the pharmacy's data processing system, an electric logbook, or a hard copy log. On line 66, it states, if obtained verbally, the informed consent shall be documented by recording the initials or identification code of the pharmacist or agent who obtained the consent. On line 68, it states that the documentation of the informed consent shall be kept by the pharmacy for 2 years and supplied within 72 hours if requested by an agent of the board. If you look back over at Chapter 111 in Section 111.004, this is where HB 1700 added subsection C and D to Section 111.004, which required rulemaking by the board. So line 58 of the rule mirrors the language required by subsection C. Line 62 of the rule addresses the specific consent documentation as required by subsection D1. And line 66 of the rule includes provisions for consent documentation obtained verbally as required by subsection D2. The board received comments from Doug Reed with HEB Pharmacy, expressing concern that the proposed rule fails to distinguish between true telehealth encounters and patient counseling communications already required as part of dispensing, appears broader than required by HB 1700, that its economic impact is underestimated, and that stopping to obtain and document telehealth consent for every question from a patient would create substantial workflow issues and delay patient access to medication, and suggesting that the proposed rule be revised to exclude routine counseling, drug information inquiries, refill communications, and other pharmacist-patient interactions that are incidental to dispensing. The board also received comments from the Texas Federation of Drugstores expressing concern that the proposed rule may be construed as treating routine pharmacist-patient counseling as a telehealth service, requiring separate informed consent procedures, and creates 2 different standards of care for the same professional service, and suggesting to exclude pharmacist-patient counseling and consultations regarding prescription medications from the informed consent requirements for telehealth services, and to clarify that communications conducted to fulfill pharmacists' legally required patient counseling obligations are not telehealth encounters. The board also received comments from Ronald Richardson with South End Pharmacy, suggesting to clarify the term telehealth service to exclude routine pharmacist-patient communications incidental to the dispensing of a prescription or the ongoing provision of pharmacy services. That when consent must be obtained, to only require a single documented informed consent for ongoing or recurring telehealth services until revoked by the patient or there is a material change in the nature of the telehealth services being provided. And to clarify the scope of data collection and data sharing to exclude the collection, use, or disclosure of protected health information in order to dispense prescriptions, communicate with patients and prescribers, submit claims for payment, or otherwise comply with applicable law. Now, if you look back at the rule in Chapter 111, in the rule, Section A on line 50 and Section C on line 54 do not create any new obligations for pharmacies or pharmacists. As we discussed earlier, Section A in the rule is the statutory definition of telehealth service, and this definition has existed in statute in Section 111.0013 of Chapter 111 since 2017. The requirement in Section C of the rule comes from Section 111.002A of Chapter 111, and that requirement has existed in statute since 2005. So, that definition and that requirement for informed consent services, for services that fall into that definition, have existed in statute together since 2017. What is new is the documentation of the informed consent that HB 1700 required. The board cannot narrow the applicability of a statute. We talked about that some in May. The legislature laid out the informed consent requirement for telehealth services and the definition of a telehealth service, and the board does not have the authority to override, limit, or narrow what the legislature put into statute as the definition and requirement. That said, if you click on the revised 291.13, there is alternative language that would meet the requirement of HB 1700 and would take out the reference to the statutory definition and statutory informed consent requirement. I believe that it is less intuitive for the reader because it does not explain the context of the informed consent being referred to, but it does provide a reference to the rulemaking requirement in Section 111.004 of Chapter 111. And when the reader goes to look at Chapter 111, they could read Section 111.004 and then scroll up to Sections 111.001 and 111.002 to read the definition of telehealth service and the informed consent requirement. This version of the rule would not change the requirements because those still exist in statute. This version would just not restate the statutory requirements in this rule.
All right, we do have two individuals that have registered to speak. At this time, I'll call Rob Geddes forward.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. Rob Geddes here on behalf of CVS Health, and not to reiterate the comments that were submitted in the written format, we do agree with those comments related to the routine counseling as well as other interactions that patients may have with the pharmacy via the telephone. I know that as Megan Holloway has explained, the statute is binding for the board and does create some conflict for what can be done. But I do think if you remember back to the May meeting, there was some good discussion related to enforcement discretion. I think also considering that some of these requirements existed back to 2017, there doesn't seem to have been a precedence set for how this was being enforced as far as the documentation of that, those services being provided by pharmacists today that are really routine, interacting with the patient, answering questions via the phone, all of the above. So just would ask the board to consider the different pathways that they may have in order to not prevent access to pharmacy care by the patient by requiring additional consents that aren't routinely done today when a patient calls the pharmacy or when a pharmacist needs to call and counsel a patient when they weren't present to pick up their prescription. So really appreciate the discussion and look forward to seeing how this may play out, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Rob?
Thank you.
Rob. Next, I'll call Janu Phillip.
Good morning. Janu Phillip, Director of Pharmacy Affairs. Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board for the opportunity to speak. So I would align with the comments that were submitted by the submitters regarding how dispensing of the prescription is really at issue here. So, when a prescription is administered, there is a responsibility by the pharmacist to counsel. And the concern obviously is whether or not all of a sudden there are additional requirements that go into that counseling piece. So the concern is that if all of a sudden you have to jump through a number of hoops just to counsel a patient, the question is, will that counseling actually occur? And so that's the concern that I have as it relates to this. I think there's nothing in House Bill 17 that requires the board to classify routine pharmacist counseling as a telehealth service. So I think the ask here by our organization as well as others is really just to clarify that what has been done throughout sort of the history of pharmacy can continue to be done without pharmacists having to jump through a number of hoops as what is routinely being considered telehealth. The other thing to consider is when you look at telehealth as in general, the telehealth, and they use the term service in the statute, telehealth service. Telehealth service means, and this is, they don't discuss payment, but payment is generally associated with telehealth services. When a pharmacist is counseling as part of the dispensing process, there is no payment associated with that. That is all associated with the dispensing of the prescription itself. So I think it's important for the board to just simply clarify that counseling associated with dispensing of the prescription is not the same as the telehealth services as outlined in the statute. I appreciate the opportunity to comment, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Janu? Thank you, Janu.
Thank you.
All right, board members, comments, questions, discussion.
I just want to say that I think that everybody's comments are valid, and I think that they're something that we've obviously done forever and ever. We've counseled and done all of that, and I totally agree with everything. I just want to go on record to say that our hands are tied here. I don't know what the intent was of this bill and what the author intended. I think that they didn't foresee the consequences that they would have of making those statements in the way that they did. And if we could change them, I think that we would. Although I don't see at this point anything that we could add to the language, except maybe doing the revised, which is simpler, to make it better and more palatable. But I do not agree with the actual bill itself.
Well, and the only difference with the revised is that it's not, it references it rather than stating it. Rick?
Yeah, I'm in the same line as Donna. Not being able to specify a consultation as not necessarily being the target of the telehealth is really the concern. When we add administrative burden to our pharmacies, that's where the concern is for all of us, especially that we can have to consult in so many of these all the time. The documentation portion is burdensome, and especially if you have to call them later, because of they agree to call them later to consult. But as written, Megan, there isn't any wiggle room on the consultation port anywhere we can justify with a standard of care line anywhere that in the rules.
So anything that meets the statutory definition of telehealth service, the board could not narrow out. So anything, and unfortunately, the statutory definition of telehealth service is not tied to payment. It doesn't mention payment or anything like that. So if you look back at that definition, it is pretty broad. And like I said, unfortunately the board does not have the power to limit or narrow that.
Yeah, I don't think that the writer knew or understood counseling, MTMs, just questions coming in there then answered. So
So, so from an inspection perspective, what would our compliance officers be looking for? How would they distinguish between what's normal counseling and what's telehealth?
Well, like I said, this requirement has been in place since 2017. So the only new part is the documentation. So I would hope that if they were looking for this, that they would be looking for something that did meet that statutory definition. But that said, what the inspectors look for when they go out on inspections is dictated to them. So if they're inspecting for it, it's because they've been told to inspect for it.
I have a question of clarity. On telehealth, is it a video appointment or is it a phone call? Because I'm referring back to the medicine on healthcare.
Yeah, it could be either. So if you look at that definition, they say telecommunications or information technology. And then there's references to audio and video in the bill. So it could be anything that takes advantage of either of those.
That's two different ways, median, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
yeah, and I think that part of the confusion or where we've gotten is that all of us looked at telepharmacy as being what telehealth was for pharmacy. This just changed how we looked at things, and that's what brought us to where we are. Other questions, comments, Donnie?
At the one of our recent informal conferences, we're here about patient safety. That's our job.
Mm-hmm.
I know that adds layers of extra work, and I get that. But if you remember, we had some cases where telehealth was involved, patients got drugs, no counseling, no anything, and then we saw the aftermath of that. So definitely our patients were injured by the lack of communication between the telehealth service people, the pharmacies and the patients. So yes, we don't have any control over this. We really don't. So my suggestion is that the people that need this changes, maybe we need to go back to the source. Go to the legislature, go to your legislators and explain what your concerns are, because we really don't have any control over this. Is that true?
I think that's true.
So the question then for go ahead.
Oh, I have just one specific question on line 67 of the 291.13 when it talks about recording the initials of the identification of the pharmacist or agent. So that agent could be the technician, the clerk, the delivery driver, an MA. So that could be anybody that the pharmacist would designate.
Yes, whoever is the agent of the pharmacist.
One last thing. So I guess in the end, we will be relying on the discretion of enforcement, I guess, when we're talking about consultation versus telehealth. It'll be something we have to just address, or the staff will have to look at discretionary and until something else could be presented to us. Yeah.
All right. So we have before us the original version. We have a revised version. And I need to see what the pleasure of the board is in moving forward on this.
Just to be clear, we have to move forward.
We,
Have to move forward.
yeah, I'll let Megan, you want to,
Yeah, so this is in statute. It is in effect. I would not advise just ignoring a statute. We've received no directive from the legislature or the governor's office to not enact the statute and do rulemaking. And my understanding is that all of the other health boards have enacted their rules subject to this bill.
we do need a motion either to move forward on one or the other. So a motion to adopt. We could leave it for further public testimony for next time and bring it back, but that would not, we'd be bringing back the same, or after our motion, however the vote goes. But we'll need a motion as to which version as well.
I make a motion we do the 291.13, not the revised, but the first one that was showing here.
The original.
And make that.
So we do have a motion and a second to go with the first version or the original version. So board members, all those in favor? All those opposed? So that 6, 4, and 3 opposed. Motion does carry though. All right. With that, John, you want to take us to C.1.4?
Yes, Madam President. C.1.4 is amendments to 291.55 concerning records. And all we're doing here is bringing the records requirements for Class B pharmacies in line with other classes of pharmacies. So if you look at 291.55 and you jump down to lines 76 through 78, we're talking about loss of data. And the amendment provides that the pharmacist in charge shall report to the board in writing any significant loss of information from the pharmacy's data processing system within 10 days of discovery of the loss. And there were no comments received regarding this rule.
All right, board members, questions, discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt.
Donna has made a motion to adopt. Do we have a second? Ian has made a second. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. All right, John, you want to take us to our proposed rules?
Yes, Madam President. So the first proposed rule is 291.9. That's prescription pickup locations. And the purpose here was to provide clarification that if drugs are sent to the prescriber's office, they need to be picked up or administered there. And so looking at 291.9, lines 18 through 19, it provides, and here we're talking about delivered prescription drugs to the office of the prescriber. And lines 18 through 19 provide for a dangerous drug that is for pickup by or administration to the patient in the prescriber's office. So we're just adding that new language.
All right. Any questions here? No? Stacey, you look like you're...
Isn't there something, is there wording in the DEA about like controlled substances can't go to a prescriber's office? Or is this different?
This is just changing the rule for the dangerous drug.
Okay.
And basically what it's saying, and it goes back to an instance where, you know, a pharmacy was delivering to a physician's office and then that physician was mailing it out. So it's really just clarifying that when it goes to a physician's office, it needs to be picked up or administered at that office. It shouldn't have further distribution. All right. Do we have a motion to?
I have a quick
Go ahead.
question. Multi-dose examples and of controls. This is here. I guess we're only talking about line 18 and 19. I'm concerned about some of the other scenarios where we mail orders to the doctor's office that are multi-dose or controls, some mental health prescriptions and things like that. This is not what we're talking about here, or am I mistaken with that?
Yeah, so the only proposal here is on line 18 regarding dangerous drugs. So there's nothing, not to say that we couldn't bring that, but there's nothing in this proposal that references controlled substances. And the dangerous drugs has no limitation. It just says for a dangerous drug that is for pickup, or it doesn't limit it to a certain dosage.
And if it's multi-dose, you can't break it. So
Isn't this patient specific though?
Yes, this is
Yes.
patient
And
specific.
the other is just more stock, or if you're selling drugs to a clinic or they order from you, is that what you're thinking, Rick?
Well, there's obviously just line 18 and 19 on itself. I understand. I just think there's more complication to it with some other drugs that are out there. They're multi-dose or controlled substance. I don't know if we need to just have a different rule for a different time related to that. It's not just the one dose here that we're talking about here. Some we send in, some of the drugs that get sent into the doctor's offices are multi-dose and can't be single dose. It's just a burden to do that. So that's really what I'm thinking of, like line 20 and 21. But that's really what I was thinking about.
Well, and the good thing is that what we're doing is we're proposing this, so it'll allow for it to go forward as a full rule.
Yeah.
So it could come back for comment at that point.
Sure, I think we'll need some more follow-up then, yeah.
And then we can tweak it.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to propose, or is there any more discussion? Donnie has made a motion to propose. Ian has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, John.
All right, Madam President, we're going to do rule review real quick, and that's C.3. Behind there, you'll find the rule review plan for fiscal year 2026 through 2029 review and approval. State law requires you, board members, to review the rules on a 4-year cycle. And while state law requires you to review the rules on a 4-year cycle, what you are looking to see here is if you still need these rules. It is not about the content of them. And the two up for adoption today, the first one, C.3.1.1, concerns Chapter 281, concerning administrative practices and procedures. And the second one is C.3.1.2, concerning Chapter 311, concerning the Code of Conduct. And again, both of those are up for adoption today.
Any questions? Again, it's not the contents, just do we need the rule? And if so, do we have a motion to adopt? Ian has made a motion to adopt. A second? Rick Tisch has made a second. All those in favor? Motion carries. All right, that will take us in the agenda down to D. Danny, do you want to give us committee reports?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Actually, there is no report for the Prescription Monitoring Program Advisory Committee. The committee did not meet in the last quarter. They are scheduled to meet on August 28th, so a report will be coming in November. And same for D.2, the Interagency Prescription Monitoring Program Work Group was not called for any topics.
Thank you. All right, that will take us down to E. Ruben, you want to take us through the financials, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. As the agency's finance section supervisor, I will be going over the first 4 agenda items within E.1 regarding the agency's financial updates. I want to start with the financial documents provided to you, starting with E.1.1, which is the agency's review of fiscal year 2026 third quarter expenditures for the budget status report. This report reflects the agency's expense standing as of May 31st of this fiscal year. The next item on the agenda is E.1.2. This report is the review of board member travel budget. The spreadsheet details and reviews the board's in-state and out-of-state cumulative travel expenses as of the end of the third quarter of fiscal year 2026. The next item on the agenda is E.1.3. There are two items for consideration of material changes to contracts for goods and services for board review. And lastly, the next item is agenda E.1.4. This agenda item has been provided to you as the proposed fiscal year 2027 agency operating budget. This proposed fiscal year agency operating budget is presented to the board for review and approval. This proposed budget adheres to the General Appropriations Act. The left side of the page reflects the agency's appropriation as stated in the General Appropriations Act, or the GAA. The left side also reflects the adjusted agency budget. Furthermore, the right side of the page reflects budgeted amounts designated by expense category, such as salaries, travel, and other operating expenses. The adjusted budget amounts are reconciled to the total expense categories or total expenditure budget. At this time, I'm available for any questions regarding these financial board materials.
Thank you, Ruben. Are there any questions for Ruben? Seeing none, we do need a. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Danny.
I had one.
Donnie.
Back on the previous page on our vendors, on page, I don't know what page that is, but where did the,
1.3.
on the amended new contract for our CPA, can you explain that? That the original contract amount and the new amended contract amount?
You need your microphone, Mike.
I'm sorry, and I didn't.
Sorry, that's the biennial total.
Okay. Oh, for 2 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That explains. I wanted to be sure and understand that. Thank you.
Any other questions for either Ann or Ruben? So again, board members, we must approve this budget. Do I have a motion to approve? Ian has made a motion to approve. Donnie has made a motion to second. All those in favor? All right. All right, Deanie, do you want to take us through an update on LAR?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Just a quick update on where we are with the legislative appropriations request for fiscal year 28-29. If you guys remember, the exceptional item request was approved at the May meeting. And so the LAR is currently being worked on by Ann and Ruben, and Sean has been brought into that process. And so that'll be ready to turn in on August the 7th.
All right. Any questions for Danny on that? All right. We're going to skip down to E.3. Our auditors are here, and they asked if there was a possibility to go earlier if they could. So at this time, Mr. Glenda, if you want to come forward.
Good morning, Madam President of the Board. Thank you for having me here today.
If you want, you can just take a seat and microphones down there rather than.
Again, good morning. Thank you for having us here. With me today is Veronica Lopez Alvarez. We're both from Garza Gonzalez and Associates. I'm a CPA and been with the firm a number of years. We're here today to present the annual internal audit report and the results of the audit of the licensing pharmacist area and its compliance with the requirements set by applicable sections of the Texas Pharmacy Act and other applicable state and federal requirements and the TSBP's established policies and procedures as applicable to the area for the year ended September 30th, 2026. Our audit procedures determined that the internal control structure over the area was adequate and no material instances of non-compliance were noted. However, we did notice identify certain matters detailed in this report that presents opportunities to strengthen internal controls and enhance compliance. So there was one comment and two observations that we made, and they are detailed in the report, and we can cover that further. We also conducted follow-up procedures on the findings and recommendations from a prior internal audit that were not fully implemented, and we have discussed the audit climate comments and recommendations for the area, as well as follow-up results with various pharmacy board personnel. This report was prepared by Garza Gonzalez and Associates, an independent certified public accounting firm following generally accepted government auditing standards and the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing. And that is basically our opinion statement. We identify in the introduction the applicable Texas Occupation Code, Title III, Subtitle J, and the composition of the board. Going forward to some of the requirements of the State Auditor's Office, we present compliance with the Texas Government Code and required posting of the internal audit reports as they are submitted to the board and approved. For consulting and non-audit services, we did not perform any consulting services. We're not aware of other consulting services that may have been performed. Our external quality assurance review is dated January 20th, 2025, and indicates that we complied with the highest standards of the board. Our internal audit plan is presented here for fiscal year 2026 as required. And that is a document that we have previously presented and has been approved by the board, and was the document which we followed in performing our audit procedures. Part of the audits that were performed in the prior years were the internal agency compliance audit, and we have two follow-up comments that we have determined the status of as of fiscal year 2026. The executive summary and background. The licensing department is responsible for monitoring the issuance and renewal of the licenses to ensure compliance with the Texas Occupation Code, Chapters 558 and 559, and the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 295. Under the organizational structure, the department is managed by the Director of Licensing, and the other key role is the License and Permit Specialist, which is a team lead. The areas that were included under the audit were licensing process for new, provisional, and temporary pharmacist licenses, licensing renewal process for pharmacists, pharmacist application and review process, and the continuing education as required to be licensed. An additional part of our audit, we reviewed the licensing pharmacist statistics and determined that the amounts reported to the board were accurate, and the number of new licenses issued to individuals for both Q1 and Q2 were 395 and 281 respectively, and the number of licenses renewed for individuals were 5,306 for Q1 and 5,067 for Q2. Under the audit scope and methodology, the audit scope included selected pharmacist licensing activities and functions during the 6 months period from September 1st, 2025 to February 28th, 2026. Some of the items that we obtained and reviewed and our methodology for the audit were the occupation codes 558 and 559, organizational chart of the area, the policy and procedure manual, various sample documents, statistical reports as mentioned for quarter 1 and 2, and the performance measures definition in, as listed in the TSBP strategic plan. We performed procedures to achieve the audit objective, including the following: reviewed and obtained an understanding of the state laws, reviewed the area's policies and procedures. We selected a sample of 30 new pharmacists, including 3 provisional licenses and 25 license renewals, which was part of our sample. And we determined whether compliance with the occupation code, both 558 and 559, and rules and department procedures. We also selected a sample of 5 licensed pharmacists whose continuing education records were audited by TSBP during the audit period. And as mentioned, additionally, we obtained user account lists for the Versa software modules and verified that users were current TSBP employees and only assigned appropriate user groups and roles. Additionally, as mentioned, we determined verified the performance measures as reported for October for the quarter 1 and quarter 2 to the board. On page 10, we have the rating of the finding that we have included in the report, and we rate it as low since we have identified strengths that support the audited entity's ability to administer the programs and functions that we audited. The comment number 1 for the report was auditing CE requirements of new pharmacists and initial renewal period. And our recommendation is that we recommend that the procedures for the CE audits include the review of CE obtained during the initial renewal period to confirm the completion of the requirement related to prescribing and monitoring controlled substances when applicable, and included in the report is a management response. Our 2 observations that we included in the report is the documentation of physical notifications. We recommend that the board implement procedures to document the date that notifications are mailed when applicable, to document with compliance with 559.006 of the occupation code. The second observation is a review of specialty CE requirements, and our recommendation is that TSBP implement procedures to ensure CE related to sterile compounding are reviewed during the CE audit process. In addition, as part of the CE audit program process, that the licensing specialist should determine the sterile compounding level of the licensee to ensure that the CE obtained and reported is sufficient. I'm open to any questions that we might have over the report on the licensing pharmacists.
Board members, do you have any questions for the auditors? All right, we will need a motion to approve this report. Do we have a motion to approve? Donnie has made a motion to approve. Ian has seconded. All those in favor of accepting the report? Any opposed? All right. Well, Mr. Galindo, thank you so much for y'all's service and for the report.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time and effort that you give us in the hospitality.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll go up to E.2. And if Raquel, you want to come forward? Caroline, if you want to start us off.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so at E.2.1 is board staff's report that you're familiar with. The top chart is the historical information from the past 3 fiscal years of participants in the peer assistance program. The bottom chart is the current fiscal year, and this is a cumulative chart. We started with an account at the beginning of September 1st, 2025, and then this report shows you what's been added, particularly in quarter 3. So from March through the end of May, the number of additional participants that joined the peer assistance program. And those are categorized by their license type.
Any questions for Caroline? All right. Cal, you want to take us through the report?
Sure. Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, and staff. My name is Raquel Leal, and I'm the director for PRN. I'm here this morning to read PRN's report for the 4th quarter of the current fiscal year. The Professional Recovery Network continues to receive a number of referrals regarding potentially impaired pharmacists and pharmacy students. Compliance by current participants is acceptable, and all concerns regarding public safety have been reported to TSBP. On April 9th and 10th, PRN staff attended the Austin TAP Symposium at the Austin Marriott South. The event brought together substance use and mental health professionals, offering continuing education opportunities and panels covering topics like fentanyl, cannabis, and the latest in addiction recovery. On April 15th, PRN staff spoke to the P1 students at UT College of Pharmacy to discuss problematic substance use and share mental health and substance abuse statistics for healthcare professionals in the U.S. At this presentation, PRN also talked about the services that PRN provides, resources for healthcare professionals who need mental health and substance abuse support. On April 20th, PRN staff spoke to the students at the University of Incarnate Word, where we spoke with student pharmacists about mental health and substance use statistics and shared with students the benefits of a peer assistance program and the PRN process. Also in April, PRN was able to exhibit at TSHP's annual conference, which took place at Moody Gardens Hotel and Convention Center in Galveston. At this conference, PRN was able to increase visibility, and we had the opportunity to connect with and educate attendees about the program services and resources. During this past quarter, PRN partnered with CVS and Berkshire Brothers to increase awareness of the program and the services and resources available to pharmacists. As part of this collaboration, information about the program was included in each organization's pharmacist newsletter, helping to educate pharmacists about PRN's mission, eligibility, and confidential support services. Moving forward, these newsletters will be distributed on a quarterly basis, providing an ongoing opportunity to promote awareness, encourage early intervention, and ensure pharmacists remain informed about the resources available through PRN. PRN continues to explore opportunities to increase program visibility and raise awareness of the program. We will also be reaching out to Texas colleges and schools of pharmacy during the upcoming academic year to provide educational presentations and increase awareness of the resources and services available to students and professionals. LBB numbers for this past quarter were submitted to TSBP on June 10th, and LBB numbers include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students who are enrolled in the PRN program. As of this past quarter, we had 0 volunteer pharmacy students, 1 board-ordered pharmacy student, 18 volunteer pharmacists, and 34 board-ordered pharmacists. And the final section of the report, you will find our financials. And that concludes my report.
All right. Are there any questions for Raquel? All right, Raquel, always, we thank you for PRN service and what you do for us. So appreciate you greatly.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, it is almost 10 o'clock. So we will go ahead and take a break. 20 minutes sound good to y'all? All right, we will adjourn, and we will come back together at 10:20. As far as the agenda, this will take us down to E.4, which is a review and approval of the goals and objectives. Danny, you want to take us through?
Yes, ma'am. As you mentioned, we're asking for a review and approval of the agency FY27 goals and objectives. They're behind E.4, and they include licensure, enforcement, and technology, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, board members, do you have any questions on the goals?
Hey, Danny, just a few quick ones. The inspections of 40% of the licensed pharmacies, is that standard that we normally have on the second goal?
Yeah, we try to get their an inspection during the licensing cycle. It doesn't always happen. For sure, we want to get there for the sterile compounding. Anything that's sterile compounding, they need to be licensed. They need to be inspected before they're licensed.
Okay.
So that 40% puts us at about where we are as far as our goals.
Okay. Since have you, the other thing I looked at too is on the first goal. I guess it's the licensing, is the efficiency side of that. We don't have a goal for like turnarounds and licenses, applications and things like that. Is that not feasible to have that? Like certain times a year seems like it's longer and more challenging. Like right now, I think there's
and Megan, you can jump in, but there's a lot involved in that process.
Yeah,
and we want to make sure that we do our due diligence with verifications and credentialing and all of those things to make sure we have the documentation that we need for licensing.
Okay.
So to me, the goal really to support our mission is making sure that the licensees are qualified. And so I would love, service is very important. I get it, but to commit to a turnaround time of whatever, 2 weeks or whatever. And it's a manual process, a lot of it.
Or even just the language says to establish, implement efficient, reasonable, something efficiency somewhere. I think you can't put a number on there.
I feel like that's part of our technology too, looking down the road, having to modernize some of these processes and systems. But that's more of a long-term part of the strategic plan.
I had one more comment. Sorry,
I was going to make a comment, and then I'll go to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the other part of it is just looking at, the workload, and we all know that, once the grads,
it's a lot of people.
Yeah, they all graduate exactly at the same time, and then they're all being processed a little bit longer than we would like, because we want them to take their test faster. But
the feedback I get is that every summer it's going to be like that because we have a lot of new people.
And we watch our customer service, the comments and the satisfaction surveys and that sort of thing, and we respond to those. And so I feel like we have a good idea of where our service is, and based on the feedback. And like I said, we're doing everything we can to speed it up, but at the same time, we don't want to compromise quality or the standard.
Understand.
Do we have a plan for the additional work that will be coming in with the
CPE monitoring?
The P4s needing to now be able to take their test. Do we have that?
We've talked with Misty, and we had a call with Diane Ginsburg about what it looks like up front, and what the logistics are. And Misty's actually working on that right now, and with NABP involved in those conversations too. I feel like it's going to be difficult at first, the first round. After that, it'll level off. It'll just be the normal cycle. But that first round, and it might have, you guys just approved it, so it might happen this December. You're probably looking at the first batch, and it's open to every school now. So it might be staggered. There might be some in the winter and some in next summer. But I really feel like next summer there might be a little bit more of a delay than usual, but after that first round, it should level out.
Rick, just as a FYI, for your question, the LBB does assign us performance measures, and they assign, if there are days that they do key measures, and those come out in our annual report, which will be the answer to these goals and objectives. So we don't have a days assigned by the LBB at this time, but we do have number statistics.
Okay, and that's fine. The last one, and I don't know how this would fit, but we just a goal is always for me to try to reduce the amount of rules that we have, and I'm not sure where that would fit in a goal or not. We can't have a line of goals. We want to have X number less or whatever like that. But I think we should be looking as a board as to ways we can try to streamline some of the rules that we do have. We have so many of them. I know we took a little bit of commentary in some of the previous meetings, Danny, about rules and standard of care and whatnot. But I think something to think about in the future is just some of the ways we can try to, go towards that model a little bit more. But I understand it's a little challenging to do that all full stop. So as a goal of trying to just always look for ways to reduce rules, I guess that's the way I'm trying to think about it as a goal.
Well, and the thing to remember is a lot of ours is in statute. So there's just a lot of things that cannot be changed that we have no control over. But at the end of every meeting, I ask, is there anything that we want to bring forward? And so that would be if it's something not in statute that we feel like, and we review the rules with John.
Yeah.
Do we need this rule on a rotating basis? But if there are things that we feel like we can bring forward and change,
yeah, we need to encourage everybody to bring forward things they want to have reviewed as necessary or not.
yeah,
So
we just have to make sure, is it statute?
is it
or
something we can
is
and
it
cannot
rule?
do?
Mhm.
Okay, appreciate it. That's all. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for the conversation. And I feel like just looking at it, I mean, the conversation is there, and there's gonna be more of it, I'm sure, in the future. But just smart regulation is important, I feel like, and looking at the rules and being responsible with all of it. So yeah, I appreciate the comments.
So
Rick.
just one more comment with regards to what you said with like the rule reviews in accordance with the code. So if we had said we don't need that rule, we can get rid of that rule.
Again,
If you don't need it.
I mean, this one we needed. Obviously, it told a bunch of stuff, but should one of these come up and we just say, we don't need that rule anymore.
Yeah, and that has happened.
Yeah,
so
we did
there
it
have been
Okay.
there's been classes of pharmacy that ceased to exist, or something that was in there that just doesn't exist anymore. Then you get rid of the rule during the rule review.
yeah, if you remember, there was a rule, and I don't even remember what the number or anything was on it, but it was the fact that we were going to go and look at tech schools, and it's something that we don't do. We hadn't done, and so when that rule came up for review, and it was not in statute, we were able to completely remove it.
Yeah. So when during the rule review, that's where you're looking for whether or not you need the rule. You're not doing the wordsmithing, so it wouldn't be a wordsmith
Right.
get in there and start changing the language, but it's where you look to see if it's still needed.
So when the rule comes up, are they all in statute, or would you tell us this is not or it is? Like, for example, the one that we were looking at, Chapter 281.
We could. That would be a lot of work because it's
just-
not just a chapter. It's not like we'd have to look rule by rule every line to see where it came from.
Okay. I'm not trying to make extra work. I'm just wondering if there was a
But
way
if there is one that you're looking at, definitely you could reach out and we can look and research and figure out exactly where it came from and why it's in there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Comments? All right. We do need a motion to approve the goals and objectives. Ian has made a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Rick Tisch has made a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. All right, board members, if you will turn your attention to E.5 on the agenda. As per our charge, we must review and approve the Accreditation Council's schools and colleges of pharmacy. And so if you'll look through that, I will need a motion to approve these colleges and schools of pharmacy and a second. Rick Tisch beat you to it, Donnie. He made the motion. Donnie has a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Merriman, would you like to take us through the PMP report?
Thank you. Good morning, Madam President and members of the board. During the previous quarter, there were no significant program or feature updates to the PMP. With that said, I would like to mention that the PMP team continues our efforts to transition to a new administrative license verification tool. As part of this process, we continue to deactivate accounts that we have determined are no longer in use by the account holder. Next, I would like to highlight some of the PMP statistics compiled from PMP data reported during the third quarter of fiscal year 2026. These stats are summarized on the summary sheet found behind tab E.6 on the agenda. There were a total of 2,890 new accounts that were granted to qualifying users during this period. By the end of the quarter, the total registered user count decreased from 189,038 users to 177,368 users. This decrease in active user accounts can be directly attributed to the deactivations I mentioned a moment ago. The percentage of eligible pharmacists that are registered with a PMP account increased from 61.9% to 62.7%. The percentage of eligible physicians that are registered with a PMP account decreased from 92.6% to 84.2%. Regarding searches, there were a total of 82.7 million searches during this quarter. Of that number, 46% of all searches were conducted by physicians, while pharmacists conducted 38.8% of the total. Additionally, out of the total searches conducted, 66 million of those were integrated electronic health record searches rather than manual PMP searches through the platform. And finally, the graphic at the bottom right of the stat sheet illustrates the states or entities that Texas shares PMP data with. As of quarter's end, Texas has 42 data sharing partners.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions for David and PMP? All right, thank you, sir. Megan, you want to take us through our SOA hearing cases?
Yes. So this would be the report on appeals from the State Office of Administrative Hearing Cases and other court actions. The only matter that we have is still that Omayosi matter that you've been hearing about for a while. And I think I told you last time that the Office of the Attorney General's motion to transfer the venue to Travis County was granted on January 8th. On July 16th, a hearing was held and on the status of the case and the plaintiff's combined motion for declaratory judgment and pending summary judgment, compelled defense abandonment from second withdrawal of counsel, waiver of sovereign immunity, and enforcement of agreed board order as contract. The court instructed the parties to confer about an agreed briefing schedule and told the plaintiff that a hearing on TSBP's plea of the jurisdiction will be the first event to occur in the case, and the plaintiff's summary judgment motion was denied. That's everything we have right now.
All right, any questions for Megan on that? All right, if you'll take us through the next agenda item.
So E.8 is the discussion of possible statutory changes for consideration during the 90th session. And these are just recommendations for possible statutory changes. You saw these at the last board meeting, and there haven't been any changes to this document.
All right, thank you. Sean, you want to take us through our legislative update?
Yes, hello. Attached in E9 is a chart of legislation that affects the agency and or the practice of pharmacy. Please note that this chart was presented during the May board meeting, and as such, I will only be going over new information. Starting with HB 1700, the bill establishes that each regulatory authority must create rules that standardize how health professionals document and retain patient consent related to various key aspects, namely treatment, data collection, and data sharing. Related rules were adopted earlier in the board meeting, and this is the last pending item. That brings me to the end of the chart, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sean? Thank you, Sean. All right, that will take us to F on the agenda. And Caroline, you want to take us through enforcement reports?
Yes. All right, so F.1 is the report on complaints that were closed and dismissed in the last quarter. So you're looking at the third quarter, March through May. the top of the chart indicates those complaints that were closed without disciplinary action. And the bottom of the top chart is those that were closed with disciplinary action. And then on page, or at the very bottom is a quarterly kind of a summation of the top chart. And then the second page is the quarterly average for the third quarter of FY26 compared to the quarterly average for all of the last fiscal year. And F.2 is the open complaints. So the top chart is historical data on the number of complaints received and the average resolution time. Chart 2 is the report on the active complaints. And so the final column on the right-hand side is the number of open complaints by their aging category as of July 15th, 2026.
All right. Do we have any questions for Caroline? I think it's good to see the days going down. So we appreciate the work that the enforcement department does. All right. If there are no questions for Caroline, we will go to our disciplinary orders. I'm sorry, we're going to skip over G. We're going to go down to G2 though. Just kind of for everybody's information, the two considerations for proposal for decision. The first one is scheduled for 11:30, and the second is for 11:45. So we'll continue down the agenda. We'll come back and do those at their assigned times. So Megan, if you want to take us to G.2.
Thank you. G.2 is a report on, well, I guess to back up. You received the information associated with the items under G in a link, and this information has also been put on your laptops. These are all of the agreed board orders, default orders, and remedial plans that have either been entered or are being proposed to you. And G.2 is a report on all of the orders that have been entered by Danny as the executive director. These are the ones that you have authorized him to enter. This item does not need a vote and is just for your information. So if you do not have any questions on G.2, we can move on to the next part.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So in G.3 are the proposed agreed board orders and default orders, and G.4 are the proposed remedial plans. These include both orders and remedial plans resulting from informal conferences and those proposed by mail per your previous instructions. You'll notice for the orders resulting from an informal conference, the chart indicates the board members that were at that informal conference. If you participated in the informal conference, we would automatically recuse you from that vote. So unless you have any questions about these, we would need a motion to approve the proposed agreed board orders and default orders and the proposed remedial plans. So that is both items G.3 and G.4.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve? Ian has made a motion to approve. Donnie has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, those are approved then. All right, next on our agenda is our election of board officers. I have said over and over again, I can't believe it's been a whole year. I do want to thank Donna and Donnie for their service this year. Obviously, they stay in these positions until September the 1st. But we do need to elect both a vice president and treasurer. At this time, I will take nominations for treasurer. I have a motion for, or a nomination for Suzette Tiarina. Do I have another nomination? Seeing no other nominations, all those in favor of Suzette Tiarina for treasurer, please say aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, Suzette. I will now take nominations for vice president. Do we have? Good. We have a nomination for Jenny Yoakum for vice president. Do we have any other nominations? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of Jenny Yoakum as vice president, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Well, congratulations. All right. That will take us to our miscellaneous. So board members, as is the custom, at this point, I'll ask you for anything that should be placed on the agenda for our November meeting. No items? Okay. All right. So looking at the calendar, just so you kind of know what's going on. This week on Thursday and Friday, Danny and I will be attending the Texas Pharmacy Congress, which will be in College Station. We do have informal conferences on September the 1st through the 3rd, and that will be Donna and Rick Tisch. Multigon will be in Asheville this year and will be September 23rd through the 26th. Our NABP forum will be in at the NABP offices in Chicago, September the 28th through the 29th. We do have informal conferences October the 6th through the 8th, and we have Jenny and Donnie then. The NABP district meetings will be in Spokane, Washington. We had a little bit of a discussion about we need to check to make sure they are all good up there, but that will be October the 18th through the 20th. Our next board meeting is November the 3rd. Board members, I will remind you all that our annual training will be the day before, so you need to plan on 2 days for that. So it'll be November the 2nd and the 3rd, with the meeting on the 3rd and the training on the 2nd. We do have special recognition. Recently Iona Grant announced her retirement and has retired due to Iona's length of service and the difference she's made in our profession, as well as in protecting the citizens of Texas. We want to recognize Iona and wish her well formally in her retirement. We do have another special recognition. To my knowledge, we've never had this circumstance occur, but we do have one of our board members that has reached a pinnacle point in his career, as is historically the case and tradition. Just as the board issues a first license, when you get your license, when you hit 50 years, you get a certificate. So, Donnie, if you will join Danny and I, we're going to have you open this up. There's an official congratulatory letter of 50 years of service to Donald Gene Lewis.
Thank you very much. It's been a quick 50 years, I guarantee you that. Thank you. This is great.
To our knowledge, we went back and looked. We've never had a situation where a sitting board member has received their 50-year certificate at a board meeting while they are serving. So, congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
I think Mason wants a picture.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I will tell you that it is now 11:46. I'm sorry, 10:46. I was trying to get it fast. We will adjourn until 11:30, and at that time, we will hear our first consideration for the proposals for our decision in our disciplinary orders. So with that, we will adjourn until 11:30.